Welcome to the Haven Collective. I'm J.R. Forasteros, and this is the Beacon Bit. Today we're going to be talking about Revelation chapter 18, the so-called funeral for the prostitute of Babylon. I think in our current moment, one of the most painful things for me is to witness the attacks that we are seeing on equality. Whether it's the assaults on diversity, equity, and inclusion, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the war against our LGBTQ friends, or even the way that voting rights are under attack with the gerrymandering that's happening down here in Texas and around the country. It just seems as though we are under a concerted effort to roll back a lot of the steps towards equality that our country has taken over the last 50, 60 years. And I think that's really scary and it's really sad. And this is something that Jason Stanley, in his book, How Fascism Works, warns us about. He says, according to fascists, equality is the Trojan horse of liberalism. It's what marginalized groups use to undermine the dominant group. So, in other words, we are being taught that these calls for equality are actually attacks on the values of the particular group of people that Trump and the MAGA movement represent, which is, white American men. That because this group is being attacked, it's all being done in the name of equality. So we have to combat equality. And if that sounds a little strange to you, remember that this is what propaganda does, right? We talked about propaganda, that it cloaks these undemocratic impulses, which in this case is an attack on equality, in virtuous sounding things, like we're trying to protect people, we're trying to fight the good fight, and not let people be attacked needlessly. Now, I think a fair question is, why would we do that? Like, what is so bad about racial equality, about sexual equality, about everyone getting the right to vote? Like, why could we possibly be against those things? Is it just naked cruelty? And I really think it's not. I'm going to invite you to try to have some empathy today with some of these folks, because again, I think what they're experiencing is a profound emotional trauma that they're turning to these fascist tools and movements to deal with. So again, I want to read another quote from Jason Stanley where he's meditating on why equality is so often under attack. He says, empires in decline are particularly susceptible to fascist politics because of this sense of loss, right? The empire's in decline, so it's experiencing loss. He goes on to say, it is in the very nature of empire to create a hierarchy. Empires legitimize their colonial enterprises by a myth of their own exceptionalism. In the course of decline, the population is easily led to a sense of national humiliation that can be mobilized in fascist politics to serve various purposes. So, for instance, the American Empire justified its rule through white supremacy. That's how we justify slavery. That's how we justified genocide of Native American people. That's how we justified our imperial movement in Central and South America and the way we interfered with those governments in all of the ways that led to the current migrant crisis that we're seeing at our borders today. Right? We justified it all through white supremacy, through saying that whiteness is the norm and the best. And now that has all been challenged through DEI, through the LGBTQ movement, through the voting rights movement that sought to enfranchise historically marginalized voters, which was often people of color, right? Now that it's all being attacked, the people who have benefited from that system, which is people like me, right? Like white men especially, are feeling a sense of loss. And here's the thing, it's real, but it's also good, right? Because what we're seeing is a balancing of scales, right? Things were like this, and now we're trying to move them to more like this. But look at what's happening. As we're elevating one group of people, the people who were never supposed to be this high are yet experiencing like a real objective movement down. So there is actual loss being experienced. And it doesn't matter that we're losing things we never should have had in the first place. Again, that's good. That's justice. It's still experienced as loss. I still feel as though I am losing because I am. And it's very difficult when you're experiencing loss to be okay with that because it hurts. It's, again, an emotional hurt that is deeper than the rational feeling of, hey, this is all good and well because the world is getting more just. Now, I want to bring all that up because today we're looking at a text in the book of Revelation that, frankly, I did not understand for a long time. If I'm being real honest with you, I actually skipped over it a lot of times when I was working through Revelation because I just thought it was weird and it didn't make any sense and it was irrelevant. But I've come to believe it's one of the most important texts that we could possibly read for our day and time, and it's the so-called funeral of the prostitute of Babylon. Now, if you were here when we looked at the mythic past, we looked at this image of the prostitute of Babylon as a parody of the goddess Roma. She represented the Roman people. And so at the end of chapter 17, she is consumed by her own violence, right? She becomes a victim of her own, the way empires fall, right? And then now there is a funeral happening for her. And it's worth asking who in the world would attend a funeral for the fall of an empire. But when you pay attention to the people who are listed as grieving, they are all people who were benefiting from the empire. They are the merchants who became wealthy from the trade, the ship builders and the sailors who benefited from the shipping, and the kings who profited by being attached to the Roman Empire. They are all those people, in other words, who had more than they should have, who were now experiencing a divine reckoning and a justice, and they're grieving because they're losing, and they're losing because the empire is in decline and is failing, and it is causing real trauma for them. Now, none of that justifies what authoritarian and fascist governments do, which is try to attack the people who are gaining, right? Because they live in a zero-sum system where the fact that these people are gaining necessitates me losing. And so they figure if we can just attack those people and put them back down, that'll push us back up. Even to the extent that's true, it's evil because it's predicated on a hierarchical world that's unjust. Now, churches for a long time have endorsed and maintained hierarchies, whether that's racial hierarchies, whether that's gender hierarchies, saying that, men are able to teach and preach and women aren't, or whether that's sexual hierarchy, saying that some sexualities are sinful and evil while others are God ordained. We cannot deny that we have been part of the problem. But there's no time like the present to repent of these things, to say that if we truly want to be a church that's about the liberation of all people, that's truly good news for all, that is not one of the people who are mourning the death of the empire, then we have to listen to the angel that called out at the beginning of the funeral, "Come out of her, my people. No longer take part in her wickedness." We have to be a church that loudly insists on equality and perhaps even provides some space for people like me who are going to be grieving the loss even as we acknowledge that it's what needs to happen. That can be a really complex thing to navigate, especially in a church that has both people like me and people who are representative of more marginal communities. How do you do both of those things at once? Is it even possible? Well, I think that's what we're going to be discussing in our beacons today. I can't wait to do that. And until then, grace and peace go with you.